Welcome everybody to another night of racing in the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy, and this week we bring action to you from the Snetterton 300 circuit down in the southeast of the United Kingdom. A fast but technically demanding circuit, which definitely gives the drivers lots of opportunities to overtake. So I think we're in for another two very eventful races, which really has kind of been the theme of the season since we started about a month or so ago at Donington Park. The racing has been very, very competitive ever since, really, with the championship battle equally as tight, and only now 6 races to go to decide the first ever champion of the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy. Expect points to start to become even more significant, and maybe expect a few drivers to start really feeling the pressure. It's going to be an entertaining night. 2 races coming your way, plus a qualifying session that's due to get underway in about 15 minutes time or so. So plenty of action in a relatively short space of time. My name's Andy McEwen, up here in the commentary box as ever, with the pleasure of bringing all of the action to you. And I'm joined as well here, before we get into the actual competitive element of the night, by Dan Blake, who is also doubling up, as he does in the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy, as the clerk of the course. And Dan, I know that in these last few minutes before we actually get the qualifying of the race underway, you're sat there kind of taking a few deep breaths, because it tends to get quite busy for both of us, really, doesn't it, once we go racing? It's been so frenetic all season long. It's a job sometimes to know where to look.
Yeah, but hello viewers, hello Andy. It's been a really good season though. The racing has been close and fierce, and it really has been some great watching. And week on week, you're sort of seeing, although the 4-tech drivers seem to have maybe a little bit of an edge at the moment, the battles have been really good all throughout the field. And a circuit like Snetterton, a bit wider of a track compared to Alton Park last week, I think there'll be similar in store again tonight.
Well, now that's something we don't see that often. Chris Lullum spinning there in the practice session in which the drivers are still taking part in. There are, as I said, about 12 minutes left to go of free practice before the race gets underway. The reason I say that Chris Lullum spinning is a rarity is because Chris Lullum is our championship leader at the moment on 110 points. He has just a 3-point cushion arriving here at Snetterton after 2 very eventful races last time out at Alton Park, the first of which was won by Luke Browning. He took the race victory to keep himself well and truly in championship contention. Chris Lullum was second, Zach O'Sullivan third, Nico Verone fourth, and Mikael Grundvig in 5th position. Then in the second race, the reverse grid race, Jonathan Hoggard was able to get his first victory of the season. Nico Verone again starred. He was second place in that race. And then Alexei Nesov was third, the Russian driver, Zach O'Sullivan fourth, and Aussie driver Christian Mansell got himself a 5th place finish. So as I say, that means that arriving here at Snetterton, Chris Lullum has a 110 point lead. He has a 3-point lead on 110 points. Luke Browning second, his 4-tech Motorsport teammate, on 107. Luke is now only 10 points clear of Zach O'Sullivan, who had a really consistent time of it at Alton Park last time. He's on 97 points, 13 off the lead, so O'Sullivan definitely still in contention for the championship with 6 races to go. Nico Verone is 4th on 77 points, a further 20 points back, and Jonathan Hoggard's win moves him into the top 5 in the championship now. So Dan, you're right, 4-tech definitely have been the pace setters. They have been the ones going out there and scoring big points. They've got a comfortable lead in the team's championship as well, of over 70 points over Carlin in second. Zach O'Sullivan, we're watching him now on the screen. He has been catching my attention over these last few races, and I really wouldn't be surprised if by the time we get to Brands Hatch in a couple of weeks' time for the final races, he's right up there in championship contention.
Zach had a very consistent week last week at Alton Park. In the second race, there was quite a big collision on the first lap, which brought the safety car out, and sort of Zach O'Sullivan made the most of Chris Lullum and Luke Browning making rare mistakes in that race as well, and sort of picked up a lot of points in that race. So Zach O'Sullivan was a big points gainer at Alton Park, and also we saw Jonathan Hoggard taking his first victory as well in the second race. So a few different winners could be expected from this point on. We've seen Luke Browning had him in a spin as well not too long ago, so maybe Browning and Lullum struggling a little bit, which will be a sigh of relief for the other drivers. They may think now there's actually a chance they can catch them up.
Well, of course, the pressure's now on those 2 4-tech drivers to deliver, because they're both locked in this championship battle. So there is always the possibility that pressure gets to them, and if any mistakes are made, then yeah, people like O'Sullivan and Barone and even Jonathan Hoggard, their Fortec teammate, are waiting in the wings to take advantage should that happen. We've had 8 races so far, 5 different race winners, so it has been pretty wide open. 11 drivers have finished on the podium, and remarkably, of the 27 drivers who have entered at least one race in this season, 17 of them have scored a top 5 finish. So it has been pretty competitive. The reverse grid race is definitely helping on that front. But the fact that we've got 17 drivers who've scored top 5s means that actually the consistency we've seen from those top 3 in the championships, Dan, is almost even more impressive in a championship where nobody else has been able to mark up that sort of consistent points finishing. Llewellyn, Browning and O'Sullivan, at least in recent races, very much have been.
It's been sort of an ever-changing environment here in the British F4 iRacing Trophy. As we say every week, there's a good 9-10 drivers at least who, on their day, can win races in this championship. Reverse grid races in the first race in the evening, it does tend to be Browning and Llewellyn. You just seem to have that little bit of an edge, especially in qualifying. But it would be interesting to see tonight if they're able to keep that up and see what happens. Luke Browning, his qualifying record has been quite enviable so far this season.
Yes, Chris Llewellyn has been the man to beat very much in qualifying. He, in fact, has been almost impossible to beat so far this season in the qualifying sessions, but that only sets the scene for race 1, the race 2 grid, based upon a full grid reversal. So it is often the case, as Dan's saying, that one driver who maybe does well in the first race, at least in those championship contenders, maybe then has a bit of a difficulty in race 2 because they've got to try and fight their way through the field. But hopefully here at Snetterton things should be a little bit less congested than they were a week ago at Alton Park. We saw a lot of collisions, a lot of incidents in the early stages. Whoops, as Abby Pulling gets the final turn at Snetterton at Murray's Corner a little bit wrong there in this free practice session. But yeah, Dan, we saw a lot of contact in the early stages at Alton Park because of the nature of the circuit. It's tight, it's undulating. If someone gets it wrong in front of you, you've got very little chance of avoiding them. Snetterton is not the widest of circuits, but it's a little bit more open. You've got a slightly better view around most of the corners as a driver. We're hoping, definitely, aren't we, that they'll maybe be able to survive the early exchanges intact this time, and we should see a slightly more natural kind of race play out.
That is the hope. Obviously, as part of my role, I do look through the races sort of after the meeting. In the second race, it just seemed very unfortunate that there was a car which was very slow getting the way off the mark, and that caused a lot of problems. The cars around who expected that driver to be maybe a little bit quicker from the grid slot, and that's what sort of caused the second race safety car. It wasn't so much people at fault, it just seemed to be a lot of different factors combining into one. But circuit is a lot wider, but the drivers will still have to take care going into that Wilson hairpin for the first time on each lap, and it's something they've been reminded in the briefing as well, that potentially near the back of the field they may need to be prepared to stop even if it gets to a bit of a queue back down there. But I think once they get out of Wilson, it's going to be that's probably one of the higher risk points on this circuit, especially on the first lap.
Yeah, that is always a pinch point, and we see that time and again here at Snetterton. Also, at the end of the long Bentley Straight, which we're watching the drivers head down now, you get into that Brundle and Nelson complex, and quite often in the early laps, because of the slipstream effect, bunching everyone back up again down the Bentley Straight, that next sequence through the S's can occasionally cause dramas as well. We're seeing Carter Williams here on screen. He is another newcomer to the series, but certainly someone who is familiar with Formula 4 machinery. Fans of the British Formula 4 Championship will definitely be familiar with Carter, the American driver, who also has some Formula 4 racing experience over the years. Very, very well-presented car, that, isn't it, of Carter Williams? And we look forward to seeing how he gets on over the course of tonight's races. Being a practice session, of course, it is being timed, so we can have a look at how he's getting on. In fact, here early on in the night, and Carter Williams is down in 18th at the moment, so still maybe just getting to grips with this Lara Formula 3 car that we're using, because the Magala Formula 4 chassis, sadly, not yet available for use on iRacing, but these Formula 3 cars have been more than doing the job, and they've definitely provided us with lots of action out on circuit. There is of the Carlin examples, Marin Kramer's, and Kramer's arrives here at Snetterton, 6th place in the championship, yet to have a win, Marin Kramer's. And Brands Hatch he was one of the stars of the show. He had a second place finish in race 1, a fourth place in race 2. But Dan, since then, Marin has only been able to score 8 points. And they came in race 2 at Silverstone for a 6th place finish. Definitely one of those drivers who's looking to try and get their season back on track here. It may be too late for Marin to really join in the title scrap. He can definitely break into the top 5, and a couple of race wins I don't think are completely out of reach for him.
Exactly. Marin has shown some good pace, but he's just not had the luck. There's been a few races where he's been involved in incidents which have which pushed him back down the field, and he's lost laps and things like that. But Marin Kramer, as you say, he has got the potential to win races. He's been on the podium already this season, and it's the same with a lot of these drivers. They just, along with the pace, they just need to have that little bit of luck as well in the British F4 iRacing trophy to get the results. And I think, as we say, he's proven that he can get on the podium and be near the front. It just needs that everything to sort of come together. And before the end of the season, I have confidence we'll see him on the podium again, because his pace is been rather good. Another driver in this session who's having a bit of a better time than we've seen so far this season is Rafael Martins as well, currently in P5 in the Arden car. And he's another one who's had a lot of bad luck this season, so hopefully he'll be able to get a decent finish today as well.
Rafa has scored just the 7 points. He scored 1 point for the first race at Brands Hatch, 6 points even for race 1 at Alton Park, and so those 7 points he scored puts him all the way down in 22nd in the standings. However, only 3 drivers have failed to score points so far this season: Nico Pino, Louis Foster and Horatio Fitzsimon, and they've all at one point or another had to miss rounds of the championship as well, so that's maybe part of the reason why they've not yet got their season off to a start, really, as far as point scoring is concerned. Rafael Villagomez here, another new name to the series, and Rafael in the number 8 car. You can see exploring some of the grassy areas of the Snetterton 300 circuit infield. He's down in 22nd at the moment. Only Matthias Zagazeta is slower than him. And as he tries to battle not only the track, but also cars that are stationary in front of him, he is running out of time now in this practice session to find any extra speed. One thing as well that's worth noting tonight, I think, Dan, a few drivers just struggling a little bit with connections. We've seen connection issues robbing a few drivers, Zane Maloney immediately springing to mind, of some really good results earlier on this season, but we're monitoring some of the ping levels of the cars out on track, and some of them are higher than they should be. I'll admit, Dan, it's not my area of expertise, but a high ping is generally not a good thing, is it?
A high ping means that the connection between the server and the connection is not as good. In iRacing, it's good to have a lower ping. So what it mainly affects is sort of the drivers in North and South America, because what we have is the server is based in Amsterdam and Holland on the iRacing Euro servers. And of course, when you've got drivers racing from Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, South America, like we have in the championship with a geographical location, there is times where what we have a net code where cars come together because the iRacing software is predicting that they'll have contact due to internet connections and things like that. So what I've spoken to the drivers and just reminded them that maybe they need to give each other maybe just a little bit more room, and to be mindful that we do have drivers from all over the world racing, and there could be the potential that there is some netcode contacts if they're driving really close together. And giving a bit of room may not eliminate the issue, but it will help, of course. And speaking of issues as well, there's 3 drivers who aren't going to be joining us tonight because they've had issues with their rigs, and that's Belinsky, Lubin and Jewis.
A few drivers sadly not able to join us, but as we've seen, we've got a few new drivers joining the series, and so we're still standing at 23 drivers entered into the racing tonight. Well, practice is over now, Dan, so I'm going to bid you farewell. We'll catch up with you maybe later on in the night. I know your real work, is about to begin now with the qualifying session coming up. But before you go, give us a pole position prediction. Are you going to be bold and go outside of the Fortec fold for pole position, or do you think it's going to be another Fortec car on pole this time?
Oh, that's a question. I think you've got to go one of the Fortec drivers. They've been very quick the rest of the season, so I'm going to go with Chris Lullum.
Lillum, okay, well there you go. Well, Chris will be happy with that because he's the one that has the championship lead, tried to extend it from the dominant qualifying driver so far this season, Luke Browning. We shall see whether or not he is able to do it. Thanks very much, Dan. Session underway. You'll notice I'm going nowhere near predicting a pole position driver because I've cursed enough drivers over the years from saying they're going to do well out of qualifying sessions or races, and it all seems to go wrong. Dan is doing exactly the same thing, I'm delighted to say, because Chris Lillum on his outlap has already been off the road up at Palmer's Corner and hopefully hasn't damaged the car. But I'll tell you what, you really do realise that the curse of the commentator is very much a real thing. So Chris thankfully has done it on his outlap, not on one of his 4 flying laps. Now this is actually going to be a really interesting session because the way these qualifying sessions work for the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy, those who are familiar with the championship and have been following it since the start will know this already, but they have lone qualifying, so all of the cars are out on track individually, essentially. They all have the track to themselves. We can watch them all because the sessions are all happening simultaneously, so we've just flicked there, for example, from the championship leader, Chris Lillum, to the second place man in the championship, Luke Browning, but they cannot see each other on the track. However, whilst it's a 10-minute session, they are only allowed 4 flying laps. Usually that means that you can kind of hang around in the pit lane if you want, watch what some other drivers are doing. Around Brands Hatch, for example, you could get about 12 or 13 laps in during a 10-minute session. Here at Snetterton, though, the lap times are an awful lot longer, so I think we're going to see some drivers maybe struggling to get the 4 flying laps in over the course of the 10 minutes. So it is going to be a bit more of a mad rush to get out of the pit lane here straight away. Also, because it's a longer circuit, you should have your tyres up to temperature nicely by the time you start your first flying lap, but you might not be able to keep the life in the tyres 4 flying laps in total. So again, whereas in previous sessions, the very last few minutes of the session has been where all the action's been, yeah, maybe it's going to be on laps 1 or 2 where the drivers are more likely to set good lap times. We'll see how it all unfolds with 2.5 minutes already gone in the session, and Luke Browning only now starting his first flying lap. He's inch perfect though through the double apex right-hander at turn 1, Riches, then down into the Wilson hairpin, and we follow the pole position maestro from the first season of British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy competition. Can he do it again here at Snetterton? Runs through Palmer's again, right up on the curb. It really is a joy to watch a driver who is at the top of their game out there on a qualifying run, because this is when the cars are really being pushed to the very limit. Remember, all of these drivers running with identical setups. It's the baseline setup for this Dallara Formula 3 car. The only thing they can tweak is brake bias, but fuel loads, wing angles, suspension settings, geometry, tyre pressures, gear ratios, all of that sort of stuff is locked. So it's exactly the same for every single driver out on circuit. The only advantage you can gain through driving the car quicker, basically, and that's why we're seeing in these qualifying sessions the cream continuing to rise to the top. Browning then heads down the Bentley Straight towards Brundle and Nelson on his first flying lap. Rafael Villagomez is the first driver to set a time, but I don't think that's going to be a fully representative time. No, it wasn't. It was 2:16, but Seb Prio does now bang in a 1 minute 40.58. Now, we saw a few 1:39s in qualifying, so I think they can go quicker than this, and already Rafa Martins does 1:39.85. Seb Prio down to second, Carlton Williams in third. That's already out of date, though, because Marion Kramers has now jumped into second place. Luke Browning, though, who we followed around this lap, is about to come through to the completion of it, and let's see what sort of lap time he can post. It is, perhaps unsurprisingly, the fastest lap of the session so far, a 1:39.73, and he's beaten by 1/100th of a second by Zane Maloney, who was third fastest in free practice just now, and he pips Luke Browning to provisional pole position by the narrowest of margins, a 1:39.72 for Maloney, a 39.73 for Browning, and Rafa Martins a 39.85, so the top 3 separated by just over 1/10 of a second at the moment, with still roughly half the field yet to set a time. Comes Chris Lillum then, who hopefully has recovered from his grassy moment on outlap. Well, actually, his first lap is pretty slow. He's all the way down in 13th place at the moment, as Zach O'Sullivan sets a lap time good enough for 4th place. So O'Sullivan now onto the second row of the grid. And we're really watching with interest tonight whether or not Zach O'Sullivan can take points out of the Fortec pair of Browning and Lillum. To start doing that, really, he needs to start out qualifying them, and that has not been easy to do so far this season. Bring Lillum then, the young karting star who's looking to make the leap into car racing with the British Formula 4 Championship in the near future. right now he has got a little bit of work to do. He's down in 13th place on the timing screen at the moment. Seb Prio improves, I can see, into 4th, and Luke Whitehead, another newbie to the series, he goes into 5th position with his latest effort. Rafa Martins, though, goes to pole position. Rafa Martins to 139.49 is the fastest lap of the session so far. Chris Lullum comes across the start-finish line and goes second. So Chris Lullum jumps onto the front row of the grid, but he is still 2/10 slower than this man, the Arden driver, Rafa Martins, who, as Dan was saying earlier on, is another driver keen to try and get a better result this time around. But Luke Browning has already gone quicker again. A 139.22 now for Luke Browning is just over a quarter of a second quicker than Rafa Martins. So now, with just over half the session gone, the order is Luke Browning on pole, Rafa Martins second, Zane Maloney third, Chris Lullum in fourth, and Jonathan Hoggard in fifth. And so where is Zach O'Sullivan? O'Sullivan's down to 11th, so O'Sullivan is really the one that needs to try and improve here. Verone is in 8th place. We're following him now through the middle part of the lap, through Oggies, the tricky little right-hander. O'Sullivan improves. He goes 5th, but he's still behind his 2-point rivals. Browning on pole, Lullum 4th, and O'Sullivan in 5th. They're the top 3 in the championship, and it's O'Sullivan who is those 13 points off the championship lead. So is the one that needs the good result, perhaps more than anybody else. To set a time, by the way, Jamie Caroline, Christian Mansell, James Headley and Alex Connor, so we have yet to see what they can do. 19 drivers have set lap times up to this point, and Luke Browning the fastest of them right now. The drivers, for the most part, are on their 3rd laps on the session, some of them coming towards the end of laps, I can see, and they include Chris Lullum and Rafa Martins. Rafa Martins is just about to cross the start-finish line. Seb Prio just did cross the line and went into 5th position. For Martins is now crossing the start-finish line. 139.49 was his best, and that lap time was nearly 2 seconds slower than that, so he does not improve. Chris Lullum does, though. Chris Lullum gets himself onto the front row, so Lullum outside of the pole position time by 1/10 of a second, but it's still good enough to get himself alongside Luke Browning, who completes another lap time and goes quicker still, a 139.15. It's only a few 100ths quicker than he went before, but it's no longer Chris Lullum who's his nearest rival. Zane Maloney, the Barbadian driver, has jumped into second. Alexei Nesov goes 5th. Lots of improvements here towards the second half of the session. So, as I confidently predicted that no one will be able to improve late in the session on worn-out tyres, they're all making a fool of me, not for the first time, and proving me wrong. So, the order now, Browning, Maloney, Lullum, Martins and Nesson, the top 5, with Seb Prio 6th, Nico Verone 7th. Zach O'Sullivan, again, has work to do and improves as soon as I mention his name, goes from 8th to 4th, O'Sullivan, so he's right there again with the drivers that he needs to be racing with. Verone, therefore, is pushed down to 8th, Hoggard 9th, and Nathan de Villiers in 10th. Carter Williams here we're seeing heading away from us down the Bentley Straight. Carter Williams is in 15th place right now. Still yet to see a lap time set by Caroline, Mansell, Headley or Connor. Now, Mansell, Headley and Connor are all out on track, and in fact Alex Connor is on his final lap of the session. I think he keeps getting lap times disallowed because of exceeding track limits, because he's completed 3 laps but hasn't actually set a time yet. James Headley likewise is on his 2nd lap of the session. It's just one he must have exceeded track limits, and it's an instant penalty you get on iRacing if you run off the edge of the road on a qualifying lap. You'll have the lap time removed before you've even set it, actually. Verone improving towards the sharp end. He goes 4th quickest right now, and Chris Lullum gets himself back ahead of Zane Maloney and misses out on pole position by just 2 100ths of a second. But that, I think, will be Chris Lullum's session pretty much done now. 1 minute left on the clock. Just about be able to squeeze one more lap in, but just as he gets a bit closer to Luke Browning gets further away from him again, a 139.08, a new fastest lap of the session for Luke Browning. He's nearly a 10th clear again. Here is Zach O'Sullivan. What can he do? Zach is in 5th position now, and he is 0.36 of a second away from pole, so just over 3.5 tenths separating Zach O'Sullivan from the front of the grid. It's a long lap, but it will be tricky to find that much time. If you can find even a 10th, though, that would move him onto the 2nd row, and he'd be right there behind the Fortec drivers. Can he do it? He crosses the start-finish line. Zach O'Sullivan does not improve. He is 1 100th of a second slower than his previous best lap time and stays in 5th position. So the top 11 drivers have all pitted now. Browning, Lullum, Maloney, Verone and Sullivan still the top 5. Then Rafa Martins, Alexei Nesov, Seb Prio, Marion Kramers, Jonathan Hoggard and Alex Connor. This is the 12th fastest driver in the session, Christian Mansell. So he has now set a lap time. Everyone that's made it onto the track has now been able to set a legal lap. But time has run out. The session is over and he's going to be stuck down in 12th position. A dramatic qualifying session, but it perhaps is little surprise to see the Fortec drivers locking out the front row again. It's Luke Browning that gets pole position for race number 1. Chris Lullum, his big championship rival, alongside him. Zane Maloney just wants a good finish from this race. If he can get one, he's 3rd, with Nico Verone 4th and Zach O'Sullivan in 5th. Rafa Martins is 6th, with Alexei Nesov and Seb Prio sharing the 4th row. Marion Kramers is on row 5, alongside race winner last time, Jonathan Hoggard, to round out the top 10. Alex Connor and Christian Mansell share the 6th row. Nathan de Villiers and Luke Whitehead are on row 7, ahead of Abby Pulling and Jaden Ojeda. I thought he might be inside the top 10, but not at the moment. 16th on the grid for him, just ahead of Carter Williams and Horatio Fitzsimon, 2 relatively new drivers in the series, sharing the 9th row. And Rafael Villagomez has Nico Pino for company on the 10th row. James Headley and Matthias Zagazeta will share row 11, and we didn't see Amy Caroline in the qualifying session, and I don't think he's reconnected yet either, so it might be that Caroline, unfortunately, is a non-starter. And cars then are on the grid, ready to go racing here. 20 minutes the distance around the Snetterton 300 circuit. Still waiting for Luke Browning, the pole sitter, to get himself onto the grid. Luke Browning 3 points behind Lullum in the championship, due to start just ahead of him on the grid, but you can see the vacant spot there. Browning hasn't yet managed to spawn in, and now finally there, he was the one that we were waiting for. That means the red lights then can illuminate. We are ready to go racing then. 6 races to go in the championship, and a creeping there from Rafa Martins, I think that was on the 3rd row. That might incur a penalty, but the race is now underway, and Rafa Martins makes a good start. The legality of it may be in question, but he's off the line very well as the rush towards the first corner begins. Rafa Martins is losing ground now, though, as they head into the first corner, possibly trying to redress the situation. Browning holds the lead, Lullum 2nd, Maloney 3rd, but under real pressure from Zach O'Sullivan, who wants to go after the top 2 as quickly as he can, but Zane Maloney is not letting him through easily. Nico Verone's up the inside as well. Then it's Alexei Nesov, who's had a good start too, as they round the right-hander at the hairpin. Luke Whitehead and Nico Pino are already in the pit lane, so I think they must have had a little bit of contact at the start, but this is the battle developing for 3rd already. Everybody trying to get themselves ahead of Zane Maloney, and Nico Verone goes right round the outside, and I think there might have been a bit of contact there, possibly with Zach O'Sullivan, and Verone is pointing the wrong way. Rejoins just alongside Matthias Zagazeta in the 14 car, but Verone is off the road. Nesov is off as well. They're going through Hamilton. I think I just caught a glimpse of the yellow and blue car. Yes, there it is, Alexei Nesov, the Russian driver, sadly looking unlikely to repeat his podium performances from the last couple of rounds tonight, as the rest of the field heads out of the right-hander onto the Bentley straight. Oh, and contact again there, and there's a spin. That's Seb Prio. Seb Prio going around. He's collected by a couple of drivers. Jonathan Hoggard is one. Carter Williams in it as well. Oh, lots of drama, lots of bits of Lara down the side of the road, and unsurprisingly the yellow flags are flying. The safety car is being called for as a result of a multi-car incident down the Bentley straight, as Seb Prio was tagged by somebody. I didn't quite see who it was. I want to say maybe car, because I think it was a Fortec car that he made contact with, and unfortunately Prio ended up in the middle of the road. Oh no, it's not, is it? It's actually, oh dear, the 27 of Alex Connor, his teammate, who he made contact with, and then big hits for James Headley involved. Verone did well to avoid it, actually. 21 was delayed and I think sustained damage too. That's Christian Mansell. And in the end, Alexei Nesov's spin that he just had keeps him behind all of the drama that was unfolding there. Meanwhile, incident at the start. This is what happened to Nico Pino and Matthias Zagazeta. Yeah, but a contact there going down into the first corner. Always a risk here at Snetterton. It's such a narrow start-finish line, and yeah, you can't fit 2 or 3 wide down into that first corner. So, unfortunately, having said that we were going to have maybe less chance of early collisions here at Snetterton compared with Alton Park a week ago, ended up with much the same sort of situation. A safety car at the end of lap 1 and only 13 cars still running. We have lost Rafa Martin, Seb Prio, Luke Whitehead, Christian Mansell, Carter Williams, Rafa Villagomez, James Headley, Nico Pino and Matthias Zagazeta. I say lost, but actually we have the facility of a fast repair that they can use. So once the cars are fixed, they can get themselves back on track. You can see Christian Mansell there rejoining. And because of the lengthy nature of this 3-mile Snetterton 300 circuit and the fact that everybody else is behind the safety car, the lap the field will not be able to put a lap on them quite as easily. So there's a good chance that those drivers who are in the pit lane now should rejoin actually still on the lead lap, and that's something that was brought in a couple of rounds ago, these 2 fast repairs that they get to try and keep drivers in contention, even if they've had some early dramas. We're on board then with Luke Browning. Luke Browning is in the lead, Zach O'Sullivan second, and Chris Lullum third. So as that was all kicking off, I thought I noticed that Lullum had been caught by O'Sullivan. In fact, more than that, he'd been past O'Sullivan. O'Sullivan has got himself between the Fortec drivers, and something has happened to Zane Maloney, who's dropped down 6 positions into 9th place. So somewhere, whilst all of that was kicking off, O'Sullivan got second, and Maloney ended up losing 6 places down to 9th place. So what's gone on, I don't know. We'll try and dig through the camera reels and find out exactly what brought that about. We're going to see a replay possibly here, are we, from Zane Maloney. Grass this is, but is this why he lost all of the time, I wonder? Well, he's definitely had an entertaining and eventful start to the race, and Zane is looking still for this elusive podium finish. He's was one of the pre-season favourites, really, Zane Maloney, the Carlin driver. I beg your pardon, he did get that podium, didn't he, at Silverstone with a 3rd place finish, but it's not been quite the season that he expected. He was pointless from Alton Park last time out. Didn't score a single point in either race, despite, again, being on the pace at a track where he dominated last year in the Real World Series. So for Zach O'Sullivan, though, in slightly more positive news, things are working rather well, because he has managed to haul himself into 2nd position now. So Browning is still ahead of him, but Lullum critically is behind. Lullum, being the championship leader, was 13 points ahead of O'Sullivan. Things stand, O'Sullivan would score 18 points for 2nd. That is 3 more than Lullum would score for 3rd, so that gap would of course come down to 10 points as things stand, and I think Damien Meaden, the media and public relations manager, is already busily typing away on the spreadsheet. So yeah, so as things stand, Browning would move ahead into the championship lead onto 132 points. Lullum would hold on to, or drop down to 2nd place on 125, and he would be 10 points clear of O'Sullivan on 115 as it stands. But of course, once we get racing underway again, that will all start to chop and change once more. We've had quite a lot of drivers that have pitted under this safety car. Nathan de Villiers has been in, James Headley's been in, number 65 Horatio Fitzsimon. Lots of drivers have been into the pit lane for, we presume, race repairs, but a few drivers have gone a lap down. We've got 15 drivers right now being scored on the lead lap. Way down to Horatio Fitzsimon in 15th, Carter Williams, Matthias Sagazetta, and the rest are all being classified 1 lap down still at the moment. So will be a few drivers who didn't get their cars repaired quite quickly enough in the end. As we go racing, this is a really tasty prospect now, with Browning, O'Sullivan and Lullum 3 in the championship. They're further extending their margin now over the rest in points as well. So it is starting to become more and more about these 3 drivers. You see Carter Williams here, by the way. He's being waved through there. What Dan Blake, the race director, is doing is waving all of the lap down cars through. Again, this is something that's being trialled this weekend. It's something we haven't been able to do at previous rounds, but they're allowing the drivers who had already gone 1 lap down to actually get their lap back. So that will benefit, definitely, those that had lost a lap in the pit lane. I can see people like Rafa Villagomez, Luke Whitehead, they're all being waved by, so once they get back on track, they will be allowed to overtake the safety car train. But as you can see, the lights are out on the safety car, so they have to get a move on. They'll be waved through, but there's no guarantee that they'll catch the back of the crocodile again, so they really need to put the pedal to the metal. Matthias Sagazetta there being waved by as well, and this just keeps the lapped cars out of the mix, basically, rather than becoming involved in the lead lap battles but not actually fighting for position, if you see what I mean, because a lot of them are perfectly quick enough to race with the front runners, and if they're a lap behind them, then they're going to be inclined to do so, and that of course can have an effect on the points paying battles. But this new thing for the Snetterton races this evening, allowing those drivers a second go at this if they can get back around in time to catch the safety car train, but we are about 2/3 of the way through this third lap of the race, the second lap behind the safety car, and we'll be going racing again this time. There is Luke Browning then, the race leader. He will become the championship leader as well if he hangs on to the race win, regardless of where Lullum or Zach O'Sullivan finish. If they're behind him and they're in the top three, all of them, then yeah, that will put Browning in front. A couple more drivers making their way through. Rafael Villagomez being reminded that he is allowed to overtake the safety car. Maloney, absolutely the driver to watch here. He is 8th place at the moment. Nico Verone right behind him, and Alexei Nesov. So those three drivers all have top 5 pace, but they've all been off the road somewhere on the opening lap of racing. So if he can manage to have a clean restart, then they should be able to start gaining positions. Then bunching up, last couple of cars still being waved by, but the race, I believe, is going to restart this time around with Luke Browning backing up the field, letting everyone get really close together to each other behind him in the hope that when he hits the accelerator and restarts the race momentarily, they'll all be left squabbling for the lower positions and allowing him to potentially pull away for his 4th victory of the year. He's already won more races than anybody else, and Luke Browning now hits the accelerator, makes his way down the pit straight towards the start-finish line. Chris Lullum is on his toes already, trying to find the way past Zach O'Sullivan for second place, so this has worked absolutely beautifully for Browning. He is starting to escape, whilst his teammate is keeping Zach O'Sullivan busy behind him. Then it's Marion Kramers and Abby Pulling, having a great race, except she's not. She's off the road, and there must have been contact there at Rich's corner because Abby Pulling is finding herself now pointing the wrong way and off the track, and having just had everyone bunched up together after the restart, she'll lose an awful lot of places. That is a big shame. Down now to 15th, which is where she started the race. How many places she gained in the early stages from the picking chaos. Oh, she hit the curb, we're being told. Dan Blake reporting back that she hit the curb in turn number 1 and lost it on her own, so no contact. That, in a way, makes it even more unfortunate, really, for Abby. Back to the battling going on at the front of the field, following Marion Kramers here in 4th place. The order stayed the same inside the top 4 drivers, so it's still Browning with the lead, but by 1.3 seconds already over Zach O'Sullivan in 2nd. You're seeing him now. 3rd place for Chris Lullum, and then Marion Kramers right behind them. It is then Zane Maloney. Zane Maloney already up into 5th position. Here comes the attack, though, from Lullum around the outside of Zach O'Sullivan into Brundle. That gives him the inside line for Nelson, but it's a brave move to make. And he rather sensibly, I think, backed out of it. But now Marion Kramers gets a chance to attack into the bomb hole. Can't quite get through there, though. So, again, order stays as it was. This is the difficulty for Lullum, though. He wants to get a move on here because he can see his championship leading teammate escaping further up the road. But Lullum equally can't afford any contact here with O'Sullivan as he tries to get through. So the Vortec and Carlin drivers continuing to battle here at the front of the field, as has been the case really in the team's championship. Vortec leading the way on 279 points, Carlin on 204, so there's a big gap between the two in the championship, but still with 6 races to go. If Carlin can start routinely beating Vortec in points, then maybe they might be able to salvage something in the team's championship here, which is running alongside the drivers' championship, with most of the drivers competing for real-world teams that they either currently drive for or they drove for when they previously competed in the British Formula 4 Championship. Worth pointing out, though, that there are a few drivers who are privateers, not racing for a team. Nico Verone is the highest placed of those drivers. Nico's 4th in the championship, actually. He's won a race, too. He's the only privateer to have won a race. Privateers have scored, remarkably, 118 points between them. So if they kind of club together to form their own independent team, they would be right up there in the team's championship. But it is definitely a Vortec versus Carlin fight at the front of this race, as it is at the top of the team's points. Now, James Headley, I believe, has been involved in some contact, this time with number 5, Jaden Oyeda, but Oyeda's come out of that better because he's carried on in 13th, whilst Headley is back in the pit lane, unfortunately, which is kind of becoming his second home in this race. He's not really had a huge amount of luck. We're going to see a replay here of what happened, are we, as they come down the pit straight. Really a good place to be making contact. Yeah, there's not much left of the car for James Headley. Unsurprisingly, he is headed for the pits after that incident, which has put him several laps down now, I'd imagine, by the time he gets that damage fixed. Although, in fact, no, he's back out on track now with the fast repair, of course. There it is again, Jaden Oeda into the air and bouncing his way back onto the track. But Jaden, the South African driver, who really impressed on his debut in the championship a few races ago, and in this particular one, as I said, running just outside the top 10, but the big gap as well to the cars in front. He's probably going to struggle to improve much on that. With the third place driver now, Chris Lulham, about 7/10 between himself and Zach O'Sullivan in front of him. Similar gap back to Marion Kramer's behind. The leader, Luke Browning, continues to pull away though. 139.66 was a fastest lap on the previous lap that he set. And that means that he's now 2 seconds exactly ahead of the Zach O'Sullivan car in second position. So Luke Browning there, you can see him in splendid isolation down the Bentley Straight. The real question will be who joins him on the podium and in which order. Maloney are catching the cars in front of him. Well, not really, but on this lap I think the gap is coming down between Maloney and Kramer's, as there Jonathan Hoggard dives to the inside of Christian Mansell and there's contact through the left-hander. Oh, and Alexei Nesov unfortunately gets wiped out by the spinning Hoggard, who had very little control over his car at that point, it must be said. Mansell spins his way back on the road right in front of James Headley, who's thinking, please, no, not more contact. Thankfully, he avoids it on this occasion. Nesov has a lot of damage and is trying to limp his way back to the pit lane, but that was, well, Alexei will have reason to be miffed at that, I think, because he was minding his own business coming out of the corner. But again, that's an accident we see a lot there at Brundle and Nelson. If cars make contact through the left-hander, as we just saw, that kind of catapults them into the middle of the road, going through the right-hander. Here's the replay. Look, so Hoggard goes to the inside of Mansell, tiniest of touches, and it launches Hoggard's car into the air, and he spins backwards across the road into Alexei Nesov, Russian driver, with absolutely no chance of avoiding that contact. Is unfortunately taken basically out of the race. All three of them are in the pit lane, so Mansell got his fair share of damage in that too. Nesov now comes out of the pit lane, still in 10th position despite that. It was a pretty quick pit lane visit. Mansell back out in 11th, and Hoggard should rejoin very quickly in 12th as well. Verone then comes through Oggies in 7th position. He's challenging Alex Connor here for 6th. Now, it's been a while since we've seen Alex Connor this far up the order. Alex into these races at Snetterton, all the way down in 16th in the points, has only scored points in 2 races, which is surprising, but that's because he was on for maybe a podium finish at Brands Hatch before contact late in the race put him in the tyre wall. He fought that really well though for a 5th place finish in race 2, but then didn't score any points for the next 3 races before managing to finish towards the back end of the top 10 in our most recent race at Alton Park, scored 4 points there. So Alex Connor on for one of his best finishes of the year if he can keep Nico Verone behind him. That though won't be easy to do. Verone was the winner of that race at Brands Hatch, in which Alex Connor ended up 4th. Now Verone is a little bit quicker. He's catching him. He's looking for his 2nd victory of the year, and also looking to try and close the margin on Lulham, Browning and O'Sullivan in the points, because Verone is the man 4th in the championship. As things stand though, he would be about 22 points or so, 42 points or so away from the championship lead, so he needs to really be beating the drivers in front of him. That is not looking terribly likely at the moment. Sullivan though, now he is not escaping Chris Lulham here. Lulham is coming back at him in the second half of the race. We're already into the final quarter of the race now though. We hear that an incident involving cars 33, 21 and 10 to be investigated after the meeting. I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark and say that might have been the Mansell-Hoggard contact possibly, and yeah, Nesov is 33, Mansell's 21. Jonathan Hoggard, yep, is number 10, so that incident down at Brundle and Nelson to be investigated after the meeting, so we won't hear anything about that before next time. The Martins there comes out of the final turn. Rafa is, where's he found himself now in the order? 13th right now, and challenging Jaden Oyeda for 12th, or in fact, no, I think Jaden's actually gone past him recently, so Oyeda into 12th position with for Martins trying now to reclaim the position if he can. Meanwhile, Verone is up the inside of Alex Connor. That's going into Coram Corner. That's not an easy place to go side by side, but Verone's gone through, and Verone into 6th place now. And as they head out onto the pit straight there, I wonder whether Connor can fight back with the effect of the toe down there. The replay, first of all, of how it happened. It was very committed move there from Verone, but I can see on the timing screen that they're side by side again, so this is not over yet. Connor most definitely is trying to get back at him. Hanging on for the time being, but Alex Connor, we're back to live pictures now. They head into the Wilson hairpin. Arden driver trying his best here to get past the privateer, Nico Verone, who with that overtake picks up an extra couple of provisional championship points. Palmer's down the hill towards Agostini. This is definitely an overtaking chance, but I don't know whether Connor is close enough. He wasn't really. Still forced Verone to defend though, so Connor's hope is that he gets a better exit from Agostini. Increase that speed up into Hamilton, but it doesn't quite work. Really close enough here. That's not an overtaking place, but the next corner at Oggy's possibly is. You've got to be very close though. These cars brake so well. They don't go on the grass too well though. Alex Connor discovering that there as he is through the right-hander at Oggy's. So but they brake so well that you can very late into the corner, and that limits the scope for outbraking the drivers around you. So a lot of overtaking tends to happen due to the slipstream in these cars. There are places where you can do that here at Snetterton, but not that many where you can execute an outbraking manoeuvre. 67 James Headley has been given a drive-through penalty, by the way, for causing number 5 Ada to take a fast repair. The leaders, though, coming through now to start their final lap of the race. Luke Browning is the leader by 2.1 seconds. He's just stroking it home now, really. Zach O'Sullivan in second, though, is not able to do the same thing, and Chris Lulham trying to get through, but there was contact, I think. Yeah, contact down the pit straight. Sorry, my pictures were breaking up briefly at the worst possible moments. I think Chris Lulham managed to get into the side of Zach O'Sullivan there, so O'Sullivan does fend him off, and that was, here's a replay. Oh, yeah, very aggressive stuff, and Lulham, well, he might not be best pleased with that, but O'Sullivan didn't want to let him get the inside there, and Chris Lulham found himself on the grass and almost in the barriers, going down the pit straight there into the pit lane exit. So Lulham drops back again now, not quite into the clutches of Marion Kramers, but Kramers have been caught by Maloney. So Zane Maloney could still steal 4th place on the last lap. That's the closest battle now within the top 10. You can see Zane Maloney hunting down Marion Kramers. Kramers has a best result so far this year of that 2nd place that he had at Brands Hatch, a really profitable Brands Hatch round actually, where he had 2nd in race 1 and 4th in race number 2. Browning, though, is going to continue this winning streak now. He was winless. He took a win, race 1 at Alton Park, but didn't score any points at all out of race 2. That's why he ceded the championship lead back to Chris Lulham. With this race victory that he's now only 1 corner away from, should be able to catapult himself back into the lead of the championship. The checkered flag is ready and waiting. Luke Browning is celebrating already as he comes to the start-finish line, and Luke Browning will win the first race of the day here from Snetterton. That will be Luke's 4th victory of the season. He is by far the most successful driver, both in terms of pole positions and race victories this season. And will now have the championship lead that he will feel he deserves. Zach O'Sullivan 2nd, Chris Lulham 3rd, Marion Kramers fended off Zane Maloney to 4th, only by 0.3 of a second. Then it was Nico Verone, Alex Connor, Horatio Fitzsimon and Carter Williams, whilst Alexei Nesov should be able to salvage 10th position in the end, despite the incidents that he's been involved in. Had that spin on the first lap of the race on Hamilton, and then obviously that contact from Jonathan Hoggard down at Wendell and Nelson. Incident involving cars 27 and 37 to be investigated after the meeting. That's Verone and Connor. And that's, there's going to be another one here as well, because Jaden Oyeda has had contact there from Rafa Martins, Kokins, Brundle and Nelson on the final lap. And that has wrecked both of their cars. Rafa Martins, I don't think, is going to make it back to the pit lane. Oyeda is still trying to get back around to the checkered flag. Hasn't actually got there yet, but is crawling his way through the final sector. There's the replay. Well, Rafa got the curb, he was up the inside, and it might have worked, or at least they might have avoided contact, until he clipped that curb. And these cars run so low to the ground, stiff suspension, that it will really upset the balance of the car, launched it into the air. The side of Jaden Oyeda's car. Abby Pulling there finishes in 15th position. Jonathan Hoggard gets 16th. James Headley 17th, despite having about 100 pit stops in that race. He was in 3 times, and he has become the last of the drivers still running at the flag. Dramatic stuff then, a slightly quieter race at the front of the field than we've been accustomed to, but don't forget we've got that reversed grid coming up for the second race. Here's confirmation though of the result. It is Luke Browning who takes his 4th victory of the year, with Zach O'Sullivan in second position getting a really worthwhile 5th podium finish and beating Chris Lullum to 3rd, and that definitely has championship implications. Marion Kramer's is 4th, Zay Maloney has a solid result in 5th, of Nico Verone 6th, Alex Connor 7th, then Horatio Fitzsimon, Carter Williams inside the top 10 in his debut race, and Alexei Nesov will be a little bit disappointed, I'm sure, with 10th, lucky in a way to survive with any points at all. Jaden Oyeda is 11th. He limped home after that contact to 11th position, and 12th for Nathan de Villiers. 13th, Luke Whitehead, and Rafa Martins classified 14th, but he wasn't actually running at the end of the race. Abby Pulling is 15th, Jonathan Hoggard 16th, then it's James Headley 17th. We lost, sadly, Rafa Villagomez, Christian Mansell, Nico Pino, Matthias Zagazeta, and Seb Prio, all on the first lap, those last few. And Jamie Caroline, of course, never got into the race, which was a shame. Would have been interesting to see what Jamie could have done today, but we might well see him at the front of the grid. Race number 2. So that is your first race done, but don't go anywhere. Lots more racing still to come. The second race is going to be coming your way very shortly, but in the meantime, hopefully we'll be able to have a chat with some of our podium drivers. We're waiting for Luke Browning, Zach O'Sullivan, and Chris Lullum to make their way up to us. Gives me a chance just to remind you of what those provisional points are, though, because Damien Meaden has very kindly updated the point spreadsheet based upon the results that they've just provisionally taken. So Browning's 4th win moves him back into the championship lead now on 132 points. That means that he is ahead of Lullum again. Lullum will be 7 points behind going into race 2. He's on 125 points, 10 points clear of Zach O'Sullivan in 3rd on 115. So there are 17 points now covering the top 3 drivers with 5 races still to go. And it is 4th place for Nico Verone, 5th Marion Kramers, and Jonathan Hoggard down into 6th. So a couple of little changes there. The most notable, though, being the fact that the championship lead now goes the way of our 4-time race winner, Luke Browning. And Luke Browning, I can see, is ready and waiting outside the comms box, so we'll drag him in. Luke, congratulations. We're making a habit of these interviews on the top step of the podium, a habit that I'm sure you're keen to continue. That race win, though, a 4th of the season, and it gives you the championship lead back again. Well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very, very fond of Snetterton. I think it's an absolutely awesome track. And yeah, I just having a bit of fun out there, really. It's really, really cool.
The start was going to be key, obviously. You know, you had your 2 big championship rivals there with Chris and Zach right behind you. So I'm sure you knew once you got off the line well and got into that first corner first, that was a big part of the job done.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a new technique now that I wasn't using before. That's allowed me to have a little bit better starts because, before I had a continuously not so great starts, especially compared to Chris. So it's now we can match each other off the start as well, which is quite good.
You got the fastest lap as well, I think, in that one too. So in theory, you are the fastest driver out there at the moment, but we're hearing it's a top 18 grid reversal for race 2. So I've got a feeling the second won't be quite as You're delighted with that news.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit painful. Yeah, so pretty much every reverse grid I've struggled to survive. So it'll be once again try and survive. Me and Chris will be trying to go through together, watching each other's back. So we'll try our best to get through it, I think.
Every faith in you. What could possibly go wrong, eh?
Everything is iRacing.
Yeah, we're learning now. I think. Well done on the race win, though, anyway, and best of luck for race 2, mate.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Luke Browning there, well, we probably will see him later, given the rate at which both he and his Fortec teammate Chris Lullum seem to be able to work their way through the field. Zach O'Sullivan hasn't yet made it here, so shall we move to our 3rd place finisher whilst we're waiting for him? Chris Lullum, from one Fortec driver to another. But Chris didn't really want Zach O'Sullivan getting between you and your teammate there, did you?
No, it was my own mistake on the start, really. Got a little cut track, had to take a server slowdown before the restart, and then stuck behind the whole race pretty much until the move on the last lap. But it is what it is.
You had a go there. You were sort of following him quite closely, within about half a second for the rest of the race. Honestly, were you biding your time and deliberately waiting till the last lap, or was that just the first time that a real opportunity presented itself?
That was the first time an opportunity presented itself. The dirty air, once you get within 6/10 of a car in front, is quite bad with all the fast corners on this track. But I managed to hold it together just to get close enough. But obviously the move didn't work out.
Well, by our calculations, you're now back down to second place in the championship, but it's so nip and tuck between you and Luke. Generally, though, it seems that one of you tends to do well in race 1 and the other maybe then fights back and scores the points back in race 2. So the fact that you've both been on the podium this time, you're both starting outside the top 15 in the grid for race 2, it's the time maybe where you could, one of you might be about to build up a significant championship lead. Obviously, you hope it'll be you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so. It'll just be chaos again at the start. Hopefully I can get through it, survive, and get some more points this race.
Well, that is the plan, I'm sure. We'll see how
Yeah.
well that works out for you. Congratulations, though. Another podium finish there, and still very much in this championship fight.
Thank you.
Lulham then will be ready to line up on the grid again ahead of race number 2. Now, Zach O'Sullivan, going to have a quick scan, see if I can see him. No, there's no sign of our second place finisher. So we'll go straight into a little break now before we move into our second race of the day. As I say, do not go anywhere because we've got the reversed grid special coming up. We're hearing from Dan Blake, the clerk of the course. It will be an 18-place grid reversal. So the 18th placed driver, Rafael Villagomez, will be on pole position in only his second start in the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy. And James Headley will be second, but Jonathan Hoggard and Abby Pulling will be sharing the second row. And they're both definitely drivers looking to bounce back after disappointing first races. So we will leave you with a bit of peace and quiet and a word from a few of our partners. We will be back for race number 2 in just a few minutes' time.
The team at Momentum Social has a strong history in the Toka paddock, and this is our second season working with the British Formula 4 Championship, providing video and creative services. As the first rung on the ladder towards Formula 1, the British Formula 4 Championship is pivotal in the young driver's racing career. Working with the championship, we wanted to give fans an exclusive look into what a race weekend is like from the driver's perspective, with behind-the-scenes access and exclusive content. Now in collaboration with Year One TV and Jacob Ebury Photography, we're helping to bring you the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy, which has already seen some great racing so far this season. Can't wait to see you at the next one.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed your little break between races. It's usually a good chance to go and get yourself a brew, go and get yourself a bite to eat. It's a good chance for us to get our breath back because it's always full action in the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy. And race number 1 here at Snetterton, absolutely no exception, as Luke Browning once again takes another race victory to reclaim a championship lead that he keeps on trading between himself and Chris Lullum. It almost changes by the race, it seems. It's very rare that we will go more than 2 races with the same person at the top of the championship. It's almost always one of those two. But Zach O'Sullivan still lingering there in 3rd position, about 17 points off the championship lead after racking up another podium finish. That was his 5th podium of the year and his 4th podium from the last 3 races, Zach O'Sullivan. So consistency is starting to become more and more a factor here as we move into the final now 5 races of the championship. Remember, next week we will be at Silverstone on the international circuit for the penultimate race meeting, and then it all gets decided around the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit in 2 weeks' time. So in 2 weeks we will know the outcome of the first ever British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy. It's absolutely flown by this championship, and that is in part because of the brilliant racing, in part because of the great organisation as well behind the scenes, and we really do appreciate your continued support. So there wouldn't be any point in doing all of this if we didn't have you guys at home watching. So thanks very much for tuning in. And we promise that we will continue to deliver you brilliant racing as long as you keep on tuning in to watch it. And I think this second race with a big grid reversal is going to be definitely one to remember. So, drivers then are out there in the practice session, which has about 3.5 minutes still to go. So we've got time before we move into our second race. And since we have a little bit of time, maybe let's try and have a chat with the media and public relations manager for the British Formula 4 Championship, Damien Meaden, who does like to drop in for a chat every now and again. Give us some of his thoughts on the way the racing's gone so far tonight, how the championship's progressing on the whole, to the final few rounds of the championship, and it's always interesting to get the people's opinions on how things are going. Damien, though, I think might be busy in a meeting somewhere after that first race. We'll try and grab him after if we can. If not, maybe our clerk of the course, Dan Blake, can join us for a chat before we head into our second race. Dan has been busy reviewing all of the action from the first race of the night, and now I think he might be. Oh, here's Damien. There we go. Damien has made it into the comms box. Damien, I'm sure you've lots of people to be talking to after what was another very, very eventful first race here at Snetterton even, and yet again another change of championship leader. Browning and Lullum, they just can't escape each other, can they? This championship lead keeps on changing almost by the race.
Yeah, it does, Andy. Good evening, first of all. Evening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the first of 2 pretty action-packed races at Snetterton, and this championship, it just seems to keep ebbing and flowing, doesn't it? I came into tonight thinking 3 points between Lullum and Browning. Pole position is going to be crucial. Browning got a 5th straight pole position. Fantastic effort from by him. He keeps that record going. But I thought maybe it would be another case of those 2 Fortec drivers working in tandem together to get away from the rest. But Zach O'Sullivan throwing another spanner in the works there and really giving them a headache at the moment.
Yeah, O'Sullivan's consistency is what's really impressing me. He had those 2 podiums at Donington at the start of the year. Then he went another 3 races with no podiums, but in the last 4 races, he's been on the podium 3 times. And it's that consistency that's what brought him back into contention. What he really needs now, though, is another couple of race victories, preferably in races where Browning and Lullum maybe struggle. And the reversed grid races are the best opportunity for Zach to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think he showed at Alton Park exactly what he needs to keep doing. It's consistency, it's being up there with the front runners, and it's capitalising whenever either Browning or Lullum make a mistake like they did at Alton Park, and they may well do again today in Snetterton, because as Luke alluded to at the end of his interview, it is an 18-car reverse. It's a very tall order to pick your way through, and as we've just seen in that first race and throughout the whole season, the racing in the British F4 iRacing Trophy is pretty frenetic at the best of times, let alone when you reverse the guys who've had a bad start to the evening and put them in a position they really want to keep hold of.
Yes, and it presents us with an intriguing race as you get some drivers at the front of the grid we're not used to seeing there, including maybe a few of these new drivers that have made the step across who we haven't seen racing with us so far this season. Might we see a couple of those on the podium at the end of this race, do you think?
Yeah, quite possibly. Rafael Villagomez joining in for his first race tonight. Was waiting for a sim to be delivered across to where he is in South America. I believe he's home in Mexico. So really quick driver. Is doing British F4 this year and is also doing French F4. He won a Richard Miller Talent Academy program. So really proven quantity in the real world series, and he'll definitely be keen to make his mark tonight from pole position in the reverse grid race.
Yes, if he gets into the server quickly enough, because the practice session is over and the race is about to start, and I don't think there's any sign of him, so unfortunately, it might mean that he doesn't get to take up his pole position, but even so, should be another really topsy-turvy race then. James Headley on pole with Jonathan Hoggard on the front row. Thanks, Damien, for joining us. We'll chat to you again at some point in the near future, I'm sure. Here, though, is the grid for our reverse grid race at Snetterton. James Headley and Jonathan Hoggard. Now, that is an intriguing front row of the grid. Abby Pulling and Rafa Martin sharing row 2. Then Luke Whitehead and Nathan de Villiers. Whitehead, therefore, the highest placed of our newcomers on the grid in 5th. Jaden Oyeda and Alexei Nesov should be on the 4th row. Carter Williams and Horatio Fitzsimon on row 5. Nico Verone and Zane Maloney are on the 6th row. And then we get into our top 4 drivers from the previous race. Marion Kramers, Chris Lullum, Zach O'Sullivan, Luke Browning, but Alex Connor is in there as well. I think Connor may be on the receiving end of a grid penalty. That's why he's a bit further down the grid. So he actually splits, crucially, Luke Browning from Zach O'Sullivan and Chris Lullum. That's an extra car for Browning to have to get past. Christian Mansell is 18th on the grid. Nico Pino, 19th. Matthias Sagazetta and Seb Prio rounding out the field. Oh, red lights on then. Let's go racing again here at Snetterton for 20 minutes around the Snetterton 300 circuit. James Headley has Jonathan Hoggard alongside him on row 1. The lights go out. It's an even start from the front row men. Good start made there by Nathan de Villiers from the outside of row number 2, but it's wheel to wheel. Headley on the inside. Outside line for Jonathan Hoggard. Hoggard leaves him plenty of racing room, but down into the hairpin they are still wheel to wheel. Hoggard on the outside. Later on the brakes, but he doesn't want to leave the door open for Rafa Martins, which is exactly what he ends up doing. Martins slithers up the inside, coming off the corner, and it is going to be James Headley who holds on to the advantage. Hoggard still second, Martin's third, Pulling is fourth. Those two swapping places off the line, with Luke Whitehead still fifth, Nathan de Villiers in sixth, and Jaden Oyeda seventh. Nico Verone's up 3 places already into eighth. Alex Connor is ninth, having picked up 7 spots as Jonathan Hoggard goes for the race lead on the inside of James Headley. Going into Hamilton, it's hard to run side by side through here, and Jonathan Hoggard backs out of the manoeuvre before contact should be made. There's contact further back, and that's Luke Browning, the championship leader. It happened again. As soon as one of these two gets an advantage in the points, something seems to go wrong. Something's also gone wrong at the front, though, because we've had drama for Jonathan Hoggard. He has fallen all the way down into 15th position. James Headley's got the lead, and Abby Pulling is trying to find a way past. Abby Pulling has yet to get a podium so far this season, and she's on the inside of Headley into Brundle Nelson. She goes through. Abby Pulling takes the lead of the race. Headley down to second, and Luke Whitehead, on his debut in the championship, is into a podium place halfway round lap 1. Rafa Martin's fourth, and Zach O'Sullivan is fifth already when you compare that to Chris Lullum, who is 7th, and Luke Browning, who is only 13th. This is the man that could suddenly be about to inject himself right into the mix as far as the championship's concerned. Chris Lullum, though, has just got past Carter Williams to move into 6th position as we take a look at the replay, possibly, of what happened here to Jonathan Hoggard. But he got hit from behind by Rafa Martins, look. So Hoggard ends up off the road after contact from Rafa Martins. He just backed out of a move for the lead against James Headley, and that loss of momentum meant that Martins was close enough to have a go, and it did not work. So there is Jonathan Hoggard there, right behind Zane Maloney, who's gained 2 positions from where he started. This, though, is an intriguing reversed grid battle for the lead. Abby Pulling and James Headley are both reasonably equally matched, I would say. Abby Pulling's made the move to get through on the opening lap. That could be crucial, because as we heard from Chris Lullum in race 1, when you're stuck behind another car and you're not massively quicker than them, it's hard to make further progress with the dirty air. So now that the race has settled down slightly after the opening lap and a half, Can Headley do anything about Abby pulling to get the lead back? Abby gets a wheel on the grass there, turning into Oggie's corner, and then through the right-hander at Williams. And again, she doesn't exactly make friends with the apex, but nor, in fairness, does James Headley. They're both, though, being caught on this lap by Luke Whitehead. Luke Whitehead in third position, continuing to impress. He's 2.3 seconds clear of Zach O'Sullivan, but he's only a second behind Headley and pulling the top two. There you can see the top three as they turn their way into Brundle, into the right-hander at Nelson, and if he can get there with the leaders, we could have a sensational three-way fight for the top three positions. O'Sullivan fourth, Lulham fifth. That's another key battle between our top, or two of our top three drivers in the championship, and then Carter Williams look in the background, trying to get up the inside of Rafa Martins into Coram. It's an easy place to make an overtake, and Carter in the end backs out, but he's got another one of the Arden cars right behind him in the shape of Seb Prio. Hooray, Seb Prio survived the opening lap of a British Formula 4 race, and into the pit lane goes Rafa Martins. So what's that for? That is for the contact. Yes, he's been given a black and white flag for the contact that he had with Jonathan Hoggard. So Rafa Martins serving a drive-through penalty. That promotes Carter Williams to 6th, Seb Prio to 7th. That's the battle you're watching on your screens now through Rich's corner, as the fastest lap of the race goes to Chris Lulham, who has overtaken Zach O'Sullivan. Chris Lulham, has overtaken Zach O'Sullivan for 4th position, and that was into the Wilson hairpin. I think it was into Rich as he goes up the inside into Rich's corner. And Chris Lulham slides through on the inside of O'Sullivan, who, in fairness, didn't really fight that too hard. He didn't defend the inside line. He didn't hold them both up through the corner. I think maybe O'Sullivan is planning to work with Lulham here to try and catch the leading three. They're 3 seconds behind podium battles, and it really makes no sense for these two to battle each other right now when they could be making progress against the leaders. That's one argument. The other, of course, though, is the fact that O'Sullivan really can't afford to finish behind Chris Lulham here, because coming into the race, Lulham was 10 points ahead of him in the championship in the fight for a second in the points. Luke Browning's issues, that could soon become the fight for the championship lead. The race lead, though, is Abby Pulling, and she's getting away now. The previous lap, she was 4/10 quicker than James Headley. She's building the margin again now. 9/10 of a second the advantage between Pulling and Headley, with Whitehead a further half a second back. So now that he's caught Headley, he's struggling to stay with him. Looks like maybe Whitehead's got a few connection issues as well. He's just starting to glitch in and out, and that's makes it difficult for Headley, really, because quite literally at some points he can't even see the car behind. You can see it there flickering away down the pit straight, and that is rather a unique to sim racing problem. It's certainly not something that you encounter in the real world of racing, but it is one of those things that sim racers have to deal with on a fairly regular basis. Jonathan Hoggard, incidentally, has just set the fastest lap down in 8th position. Is going on with Luke Browning? Well, he's still only 17th, so I wonder if Browning's got some damage here. Zay Maloney here dicing away with Alexei Nesov. Maloney's got some front wing damage, which won't be helping his grip through the high-speed corners like Richie's. He's going to get more damage if he keeps doing that. That was a very robust move on the inside of Nesov into the Wilson hairpin. Well, he gets the place back, I suppose. It was not pretty, but it worked. Browning, by the way, answering my question potentially as to whether he's got any damage by setting the fastest lap of the race. So Browning, a 1:40.40. He's down in 17th, though, so he's not looking likely to score championship points, which means, as things stand, the championship lead would change again. Lulham would take the advantage on 137 points, Browning would be 5 back on 132, and O'Sullivan 12 off the lead on 125. So as things stand, 12 points would cover the top 3 heading into the final 4 races of the season. But there's time still for things to change. We're hearing from Damien Meaden that Luke Browning's been in the pit lane as a result of the spin he had on the opening lap. So damage was incurred, and he's made a pit stop, which is why he is so far off the front of the field. Zay Maloney is also just headed for the pit lane. That's a shame. So that means Seb Prio moves into 8th. Jonathan Hoggard 9th. He's off the road, in fact, or was off the road, going through Hamilton. He's done more damage to the car. Tracked to the pit lane for some repairs. Breathe, Andy, breathe. Remember to breathe. Abby Pulling then with the lead of the race, and Headley now coming under increasing pressure from Whitehead. Whitehead looks fast enough here to challenge for second, and he will feel that he could win this race, I'm sure, because despite the slightly defensive driving that we're seeing from James Headley here, they're not losing a ton of time to Abby Pulling. She is still only 1 second clear of them. The feeling here for Luke would be that if he can clear Headley quickly, bearing in mind we're not even halfway through this race just yet, should have the time and the speed to catch the lead. And they're continuing to be caught though by Lulham and O'Sullivan. are working together nicely here. They're about a second a lap quicker than the leaders in front. So the leaders are all doing sort of mid to high 1 minute 40s. Lullum just did a 1:39.9. So Chris Lullum is lapping quicker than all three cars in front, and he is bringing Zach O'Sullivan along for the ride in fifth. Seb Prio is 4 seconds behind them in sixth. Then Carter Williams, Jonathan Hoggard, Horatio Fitzsimon, and Connor round out the top 10. Board then with Zach O'Sullivan. So if you're O'Sullivan here, you're quite content for the time being to settle in behind Lullum. Once you catch those leading three, I think then it's every man for himself again. He does not want to finish behind Chris, given how tight the point situation is at the moment. If he could get another couple of positions, he might be able to snatch second place in the championship away from Luke Browning. He could certainly get himself closer to the top two, heading into those final 4 races at Silverstone and Brands Hatch over the next fortnight. So now, position's not changing, but I don't think that situation will stay the same. And once we get into the second half of the race, let's have a look at the lap times. Then Abby Pulling comes through, completes another lap on 1:40.84. Headley does a 40.62. Whitehead 40.71. But then again, Lullum and O'Sullivan are quicker. Lullum does a 40.36, O'Sullivan a 40.09, which is a personal best lap for Zach O'Sullivan, courtesy, no doubt, of the slipstream. So the 5th place man is the fastest driver on the track. The 4th place man is the second fastest, and the leading lady, Abby Pulling, leading the race, is the slowest of our top 5 drivers right now. Reeled in by James Headley to the tune of 0.2 of a second that time around, and the top 5 are concertinaing together nicely as we prepare to move into the second half. What has been already a fascinating second race of the day. A little bit cleaner this second one as well, so not had a repeat of the big pile-up, touch wood, that we had in race 1. No need for the safety car this time around. If Zach O'Sullivan can finish in the top 2 and Luke Browning does not get himself into the points, and that looks fairly likely to be the case at the moment, then that would mean that O'Sullivan would move ahead of Luke Browning. Right now, though, Luke Whitehead is moving himself ahead of James Headley for second place. Down the Bentley straight, he's on the inside into front. Nelson, there's contact! Oh, a little bit of contact. Has that done any damage to either car, I wonder? Headley is slow through the corner. Lullum goes up the inside. This is a big, big risk now for the championship contenders. They need to get themselves past Headley quickly and cleanly. Lullum gets himself ahead. Here comes Zach O'Sullivan, but he can't make it stick. And this is not what O'Sullivan needs, because now Chris Lullum has a car between the two of them, and he can try and get his head down and escape. O'Sullivan will no doubt get in the slipstream now as they go down the pit straight, but of course Headley is getting a tow from Lullum, who's getting a bit of a draft from Luke Whitehead in front, so there's not a huge advantage to be gained here. O'Sullivan is catching though. Headley moves to the inside line. Zach jinks to the inside. Headley is late on the brakes. He's too late on the brakes. Runs wide through Riches, but he gets across to the inside line to defend 4th position as they race towards the Wilson hairpin for the 7th time of asking. O'Sullivan round the outside. This is perilous stuff. He can't afford contact, and in fairness to James Headley, he leaves him just about enough room, and that was a really good move, that from Zach O'Sullivan. Knew that by going on the outside there through the hairpin, he was putting himself potentially in harm's way, but they avoided banging wheels. Headley, though, is coming back at him, and there is contact this time. James Headley has spun Zach O'Sullivan down at Agostini. They bang wheels, they lock wheels, around he goes again. Seb Prio has got past the pair of them, and I'm almost certain there'll be damage to both cars. That was a very, very unfortunate incident between the two of them. James Headley into the back of Zach O'Sullivan. They went down into the hairpin. And here's the replay. He goes to the outside, then jinks back to the inside. There was not a gap. He ran into the back of Zach. And well, you can see by the fact that Headley overshot the corner by so much that he was very, very late on the brakes. Well, the championship takes another twist, another turn, and you've got to feel sorry for Zach O'Sullivan, who has dropped down to... Where's he gone, Zach O'Sullivan? He's in the pit lane. Oh, yes, he is. He's in the pit lane. So Zach O'Sullivan executing a fast repair, whilst Headley has continued in 10th position. And we hear there was more contact possibly at Oggie's a bit later on. Now, this, of course, is awful news for Zach O'Sullivan. Brilliant news, though, for Chris Lullum, who is now going for second place. He's on the inside of Luke Whitehead, and Chris Lullum is through, and he will have been laughing his socks off when he saw that going on in his mirrors, because not only is he now outscoring his teammate Luke Browning, but he's also outscoring Zach O'Sullivan. Neither of them particularly likely to score points. Browning is still 15th despite having just set the fastest lap. There's the replay, by the way. It was a fairly simple slingshot manoeuvre down the pit straight. Lullum gets the tow, pulls to the right, and gets himself ahead of Luke Whitehead. What can Abby Pulling do now then? Because she's got the driver who is about to claim the championship lead. Not right behind her, but bearing down on her now. This gap surely is going to continue to shrink. The previous lap, that did come down. It was a 140.3 for Pulling, a 139.9 for Chris Lullum. So Lullum is a bit quicker than Abby right now. 1.4 margin. You'll be shocked and surprised to hear that the incident between James Headley and Zach O'Sullivan is going to be investigated after the race. That's always the case, I suppose, when you have contact, especially when it involves one of the championship contenders. Certainly Zach O'Sullivan won't be pleased with the outcome of that contact. There is Lullum through the bomb hole, already starting to carve into this advantage of Abby Pulling, as Chris Lullum has gained 12 positions, but going along slightly unnoticed in this race actually is Seb Prio. Seb Prio is the biggest mover. He's picked up 17 places. There is the Arden driver turning into Murray's corner. Prio 4.3 seconds behind Luke Whitehead, but he was a couple of tenths quicker on the previous lap. Whether or not he's got time to get another podium here, I don't know, but Seb Prio, who I seem to recall got himself, finally got that podium, didn't he, at Silverstone, but that's been about the only time that he's scored any meaningful points this season so far. As it stands then, Chris Lullum would be on 143 points. That would be 11 points clear of Luke Browning on second on 132. And O'Sullivan, sadly, would fall to 28 points back. That's more than a race win's worth of points now, separating O'Sullivan from the championship lead. That's as it stands, but of course if Lullum gets himself ahead of Abby Pulling, that's another 7 championship points. So that 11-point margin that he's got already over Browning could go up to 18 points if he gets the lead away from Abby, which kind of looks like it might happen. There's definitely a sense of inevitability about this because he is reeling her in. He's just set the fastest lap at 139.68, and Chris Lullum is on the charge now. He's almost getting a bit of a slipstream down the back straight as well. On the timing screen, the gap coming down 0.60, 0.59, 0.58, 0.55, or in fact as they hit the brakes, he's later on the brakes than Abby, and look, actually gained even more time through the corners than he did down the straight. Just a bit more commitment there through Brundle and Nelson. It is not easy to overtake in these cars. There are only a couple of places realistically where you can do it. And because Lullum will surely know, he'll have been told, I'm sure, that his teammate is still struggling. Luke Browning in 12th position right now, and he's only going to score a point or so at the very most. And O'Sullivan, of course, is also out of the point, so maybe he won't feel the need to take a huge risk to get past Abby Pulling, who has absolutely nothing to lose. Abby Pulling is not a championship contender. She's looking for her first win in the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy, her first podium, in fact, and she would love to do it by fending off the championship leader, Chris Lullum, here. To do that for still a good few minutes here, a couple of laps still to go in this second race of the night from Snetterton. Jonathan Hoggard sets the fastest lap now, 139.50. As the leaders turn through Palmer's, when does the move come here from Lullum? He's only 3 tenths back as they head down into Agostini. Has got the luxury here of being able to be a bit patient. He is 1.7 seconds clear of Luke Whitehead. And then Seb Prio 3.4 seconds behind him, so there's no pressure here from Lullum. He can just sit here and wait and pick his moments. He's caught Abby, he's proven that he's got the pace to get past her. He just can't afford to put a foot wrong now. Williams onto the Bentley straight. This is maybe the chance for Lullum to have a go. We know he's going to have the slipstream. We saw a lap ago how much later on the brakes he was into Brundle and Nelson. We're on board again now with the Fortec driver as he inches onto the gearbox of Abby Pulling. Which way does she go? She holds the racing line through the left, and that was telling because Chris Lullum didn't have quite such an aggressive run through that sequence of corners. The attitude of the car told me he wasn't pushing quite as hard. I don't think he's necessarily looking for the very first opportunity to go through. If he makes a mistake, then he'll go for it. But until then, Chris is going to just sit here in second, bag the points, and not want to take a risk that could put him out of the race. That would be a complete disaster. Another run though now across the start-finish line, and this time he's going to be forced to go alongside. He pulls to the left-hand side of the road. Abby Pulling's car is glitching in and out as well. That won't be filling him with confidence, and he drives around the outside to take the lead away. That was the effect of the slipstream down the pit straight. That's why he could afford to be patient, because that toe was enough to drag him past without having to take any late lunges, any late braking, no side-by-side runs through corners. He just drafted past Abby Pulling and is now already starting to set sail and pull clear. So Chris Lullum takes over the lead of the race then. That's going to further extend his provisional championship margin. Pulling in second, Whitehead third, Prio fourth, and catching him now by a little bit more, actually about 0.8 of a second faster on the previous lap was Prio than Whitehead, so that could change around. There is Seb through Agostini, 2.7 seconds though still the margin, so I still doubt whether he's going to have time. But if there's a mistake from Whitehead, it can still change. Hoggard 5th, Carter Williams 6th, Marion Kramer 7th, Horatio Fitzsimon, Rafa Martins and James Headley rounding out the top 10. Now, Luke Browning is in 12th place. He is only 0.7 of a second behind Nathan de Villiers. There he is. So de Villiers in front of him would be 11th place. And he is 1.6 seconds behind James Headley, which would get him into the top 10. So there is a chance here for Browning to get himself a point or two. He's got to try and clear the number 9 car of Nathan de Villiers as fast as he possibly can here. We know Browning's been into the pit lane for repairs, so the car should now be healthy, despite the contact that he had in the early stages. It's been at Agostini. And well, when we spoke to Luke Browning after the first race, he was particularly happy to hear about the sizable grid reverse. All the top 18 drivers reversed for the race 2 grid. He knew that it was going to be chaos. He knew that it was going to be difficult to pick his way through it without incurring damage or getting spun. Unfortunately for him, that's exactly what happened to him. He needs to try and get these places quickly. He's on the tail of Nathan de Villiers through Coram. Murray's is a possible place to launch an attack, but as we just saw from his teammate Chris Lullum, sometimes it pays just to get a good exit from this corner and draft past them down the straight. James Headley is in front as well, and James is pulling to the right-hand side to defend for both of them. This is going to back everybody up. Here comes Browning. He pulls in behind. Headley pulls to the inside. Round the outside goes Nathan de Villiers. Brilliant move from Nathan de Villiers then. He gets himself into that 10th position, and now Browning is up the inside of Headley as well, and he goes past James as they turn into the hairpin. They all run a bit wide though. De Villiers outbrakes himself, so did Luke Browning, and Headley is fighting back again now. But I think Browning will hang on to that 11th place. He needs one more position to scrape a point from this race. And up the road, Rafa Martins and Horatio Fitzsimon were side by side for 8. So there's the possibility of more points maybe here if that goes wrong. Browning up the inside of de Villiers through Agostini. There's no contact. He can't. Or has he got an overlap? No, not quite. You don't want to run side by side through Hamilton if you can help it. The left-hander then into Oggies. We're on the final lap of the race now, we believe, as well. Chris Lullum is already heading through towards the end of the lap. He is at Coram Corner, so only a couple of corners to go for Chris Lullum. And, well, he was a bit fortunate in that Zach O'Sullivan's incident has definitely helped Chris's championship haul, but there's no doubting the performance here. Chris Lullum is going to come across the start-finish line to take his third race victory of the season. Across the line he goes. Chris Lullum with the race win. Second place for Abbey Pulling. A great performance for Abbey. Luke Whitehead third. Seb Prio fourth. Jonathan Hoggard fifth. What's going on though further back with Luke Browning? Has he been able to get himself into the points, I wonder? Marion Kramer's coming through. There's wheels flying as they cross the start finish line there, and there's contact, and that's Headley. Headley's off the road, so it has all gone wrong there. Headley's off the track. De Villiers is off the track, and Luke Browning has come through, but with damage. So there was contact involving Luke Browning, James Headley and Nathan de Villiers, which we'll have to try and get a replay of, but they are going to come across the start-finish line with Browning in 10th. Zane Maloney was a lap down there just in front of him. He finishes 16th. Browning scrapes a point, but I think there will be another story to tell there simply because of the contact that they had right at the end of the race. Here's the replay we're seeing to Brundle and Nelson, I believe, and oh dear, well, the contact is going to happen. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing the replay, so into the right-hander at Coram. Yeah, that's where the contact was made. So into Brundle and Nelson, excuse me. Yeah, so sorry, my screen choosing to cut out at a bad moment, so I can't see the replay, but I did see the aftermath, which was that Browning was off the road. And de Villiers hit Luke Browning, I'm being told. So there you go. So Luke Browning in strife, but he gets 10th position. And by the sounds of it, I don't think there should be any penalty in coming to him. He rejoins the track and right behind Ian Maloney. So that was very, very dramatic indeed. Chris Lullum takes the win. Abbey Pulling second. Luke Whitehead gets a podium on his debut, or his second race, I suppose, in the British Formula 4 iRacing champion trophy even. Then Seb Prio fourth. Jonathan Hoggard fifth. Carter Williams, Marion Kramers, Rafa Martins, Horatio Fitzsimon, and Luke Browning to round out the top 10 finishers. Then it was Nathan de Villiers 11th, Nico Pino 12th, Nico Verone 13th, James Headley 14th, then Alexei Nesov and Zane Maloney last of the finishers. Jaden Oyeda, Zach O'Sullivan, Alex Connor, Matthias Zagazetto were non-finishers, and Christian Mansell sadly was a non-starter along with a couple of others. So as it stands then, Chris Lulham 150 points. Luke Browning, 133 points, 17 points the margin. That's about the biggest it's been for quite some time, certainly between those two, with only 4 races to go. And O'Sullivan on 115 doesn't score points. He's the only one of the 3 that didn't score in that race. That means he's 35 points back now from the championship lead. Final 4 races of the season. Dramatic stuff here at Snetterton, but our top 2 drivers are waiting to have a chat. So let's pull in Chris Lulham for the second time tonight. Chris, another race victory, possibly the most important one of the season so far, because Zach O'Sullivan doesn't score any points. Luke only got 1 point for 10th place. That means that you've now got, by our calculations, a 17-point advantage heading to Silverstone.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what I needed. But yeah, just surviving lap 1 was the key again, and letting the pace carry me through the field. Yeah, it's quite a big advantage that I hope I can carry on for the rest of the races.
Well, certainly one thing that you can't afford to do is relax, because this championship's been so unpredictable. We never would have predicted going into that race, for example, that the other 2 would have such big problems. Were you aware, once you caught Abby for the lead, that you didn't necessarily have to take a big risk there? Because it looked like you were willing to bide your time and wait for a safe opportunity to go through, maybe knowing that those 2 weren't in the points.
Yeah, I knew I had to do it completely safely in order to not be back where they were. But yeah, I would have bided my time, but the opportunity arose pretty much as soon as I caught her. So yeah, I took it as soon as it came.
Another high-speed circuit coming up next, the Silverstone International Circuit. What are your expectations there? Is that a track you think you'll go well at?
Yeah, I was pretty strong at Silverstone National running race 1, so I hope I'll be pretty good there as well. It's an interesting layout as well, but yeah, I'm sure the racing will be close again.
And that's definitely been the theme throughout the season, hasn't it? So, congratulations, another race win, championship lead by a fairly considerable margin as well. A good night's work, Chris.
Thank you.
Lulham then, our race winner in the second race of the night. Coming home in second place, though, and a first podium of the season, Abby Pulling. Abby, we've waited a while for this, haven't we? It finally arrived. It was almost a race win.
Yeah, I didn't really believe it at first. I was just, I was in P3 at the start. I think I dropped down to P4, and then 2 of them collided on lap 1. And then I got the run on James and just sent it on him and drove away a little bit. And then of course Chris caught up, but I thought it was more cleverer to not battle him and drop down to the grips of P3. So.
And it worked. It was a brilliant strategy, because we see far too often drivers, I think, they get into that lead battle, they get a bit hot-headed, and as you say, they end up losing time, and neither of them ends up winning the race.
Yeah.
Second place, though, still by far your best finish of the year, but it's fair to say speed has always been there. It's just the luck that you've been lacking, really.
Yeah, it's been really annoying. I always kind of ruined qualifying a little bit. And I did again today, but hopefully we get that sorted for the next time. The reverse grid definitely helped starting at the front, but it's good to know what I can do if I am starting at the front. But yeah, I just didn't. I wanted to battle for first. I really, really did. It's the racing driver kind of mentality. But I thought I'd be a bit cleverer and settle for P2.
Probably a smart decision, I think. We head to Silverstone now, the international circuit. So what are your thoughts and feelings ahead of that one? It's an interesting layout. We just heard Chris Lulham saying that it should produce some good racing, and I think I tend to agree with him, really. It should be a fun night, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting. I don't think many drivers in real life or on the simulator have done much of Silverstone International, so it should be quite interesting. There's lots of high speed and low speed corners, so should make for good racing.
Looking very much forward to it, and fingers crossed this isn't the last time this season we get to talk to you on the podium.
Yeah.
Stuff. Abby, congratulations then on the second place, and finally we can have a word with another surprising podium finisher in a way, Luke Whitehead, in only his second race in the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy. Luke Whitehead is on the podium, and he's just taking himself out of the commentary box. Come back, Luke, we want to have a chat with you because you finished third in that race. We meant to bring you in. We wanted to talk to you because that was a brilliant result. Did you ever expect at the start of the night you'd be on the podium by the end of it?
No, I mean, considering how poorly the first race went, we didn't even get off the line properly. We just got tagged off the line. But, I'm just over the moon. Considering we've only had the sim a week, I've only been on it for a week, so got a lot of work to do in terms of pace. Really didn't have it. Chris caught up with us from quite a way back, and I just decided not to fight him. I worked for that position. I was like, I don't want to crash, But yeah, I'm ecstatic. Well done to Abby for coming second, and well done to Chris for winning. They really deserved it, and I wasn't quite good enough to catch them.
Well, it looked in the early stages like you could hang with them though, and you were noticeably quicker in race 2. I know that we haven't seen the best of you because of those unfortunate circumstances earlier on in the night, but it's amazing what that bit of clean air and running inside the top 3 can do for your confidence, if nothing else. It really does seem to buy you an extra few tenths of a second.
It was more nerve-wracking than anything else, I think. I was sort of sitting behind Abby and James, sort of trying to see where their weaknesses and strengths were, and eventually I exploited one of them from James. He made a little error and we just went straight up the inside. And by that point, Abby had unfortunately got a gap, so it's just a bit too much for me to catch. But I think if I'd got past earlier, I think I would have had a shot. But considering it's only my second race in this, I'm absolutely ecstatic. There's a lot more to come.
Well, definitely. I think I agree with that. And I know you'll have caught a lot of people's attention as well. Many people who have been watching this championship throughout will maybe not be that familiar with you. You're a new name to the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy. So as and when we get back to real world racing, where can people go to follow you? What are you going to be racing in this year?
To be honest, it's all very unknown. I mean, we were looking at a drive between British F4 actually and potentially GT5, but obviously the virus occurred and nothing was able to materialise. We're looking for a drive somewhere next year for sure. Hopefully in some sort of single-seater racing, because that's where my passion lies. But yeah, we shall see.
Well, fingers crossed we see you on the British Formula 4 grid, because something tells me that we should see some good performances from you if you get there. But yeah, brilliant job. Well done on the podium, mate.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Whitehead then gets himself a third place finish from race number 2 in only his second appearance in the championship. Brilliant stuff. Right then, so as we begin to wrap things up, we'll try and maybe bring in some of our championship contenders, because Luke Browning, as we said, as a result of the issues that he had in that race, has now lost the championship lead to Chris Lulham, and Luke Browning, I think, is in the Tech room. So I'm going to just be rudely dragged out of his team debrief. Sorry, Luke, to do this to you again, but
Right.
as we try and follow this topsy-turvy championship battle moving into the final four races, kind of predicted it, didn't you, really? Starting down there, anything can happen. What did happen on that first lap?
Yeah, I couldn't have done anything else really. Yeah, I was just trying to be as safe as possible. But I was given loads of space and everything, and yeah, sometimes just can't help contact really. But yeah, I think that's how the championship's modelled. It's sort of whoever survives the second race is going to be, it works well in your favour. So it's it's a tough one, but that's just the way it is.
At the end of the world, though, we reckon it's about 17 points that you're behind Chris in the championship, heading to Silverstone now, and that's another circuit where I think we're going to see some pretty lively racing, whereas the last two couple of tracks, Snetterton and Alton, it's been hard to overtake, and if you get back in the pack, it can sometimes be hard to make that ground up. Silverstone should be a little different. So have you got high hopes going into Silverstone? Is it a track that you have much experience of?
Yeah, reset, go again sort of thing. I'll focus on getting the qualifying and first race 1 out of the way, and then survival of race 2 once again. So it's it'll be what it'll be. I'll try my best. The Tech boys will be working together, trying to get as fast as possible, and lock out that front row once again.
Yes, well, if you do so, I think it's going to set up some really interesting racing as far as the championship's concerned. I'll let you get back to your team debrief now, but thanks for joining us, and better luck next time.
Thank you very much.
Then, so he loses the championship lead, but he's still very much in play, 17 points behind Chris Lullum, the championship leader, who we've already heard from. We're hoping to have a chat with Zach O'Sullivan. I think he's on his way, so the third piece of the championship jigsaw, if you like, Zach O'Sullivan, there he is. We'll pull Zach in now. Well, Zach, I was hoping about 10 minutes ago that we were going to be having a really cheery chat on the podium. You looked good for a podium finish there. Wasn't meant to be, though. What was your view of the incident?
Obviously, I think, race 2 went kind of quite to plan like it did last week as well. Managed to avoid incidents and then kind of worked with Chris for a bit to try and catch up to the leaders and managed to get to the first car. James did him around the outside of the hairpin, which I was quite happy with. But I think it bruised his ego slightly, and I was expecting a move into the next corner. So I went to cover it, and I think he just locked up and missed his braking point, really, and drove over the back of me. So nothing I could have really done. But, I mean, it was always going to happen. It's very risky, the reverse grid races. But hopefully it's the last DNF.
Yeah, well, because we were saying all day long, really, that consistency's been your big thing these last few races. That's what's got you back into contention. Now it kind of looks like the only thing that will get you back up there is race wins. You need to start beating those Fortec drivers, and as it stands, you're going to be about 35 points off the lead. So, in a way, does that mean you have a bit less to lose now going to Silverstone? Because it's almost win or bust now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think race 1, obviously, the win is the main focus. I need to find a bit of pace before then. And then race 2, I think I'll try and do what I've always been doing, because so far, any incidents I've had have been out of my control. So on my side, I'm pretty happy with it. I just need to find a bit more pace in race 1.
Well, lots of practice then. You've got a week to get back to it, and hopefully when we arrive at Silverstone in a week's time, you're right back up there, because we want a 3-way championship fight going to Brands Hatch. We don't want those Fortec drivers to have it all their own way, and I'm sure you don't either.
No, yeah, exactly. Hit the nail on the head there.
Best of luck then. I'll let you go. Go get practicing now, Zach, and
Okay, thank you. Will do.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Zach O'Sullivan then, unfortunately, race number 2 doesn't quite go the way that he would have liked, but it sets us up again for some more intriguing racing next Monday night at the same time, 7:30 p.m. UK time, for the penultimate race night of the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy Season. 2 races around the Silverstone International Circuit, based around the Silverstone Wing, and it all then gets wrapped up the week after that at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix Circuit. You won't want to miss it. Head over to the British Formula 4 Facebook and Instagram pages, all of their various social media outlets, for all of the up-to-date news regarding both the Real World Championship and the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy as well, of course. And make sure you're back on Year One Racing TV, not just next Monday, but throughout the rest of this week. Tomorrow night, racing action from the BSR MX-5 Pro Series on Year One Racing TV. On Wednesday night, it's the Power Max Racing E-Series Make Touring Car Championship, which is catching a lot of people's eye because of the mix of pro drivers and top level sim drivers going head to head in those Audi TCR cars. On Fridays, it's PDC Racing League. Saturdays, we've got sports cricket action. Sundays, we have had a few nice charity events of late, and there's always something to watch on the Year One Racing TV channel. Head over to Year One Racing TV's Facebook page for more information on all of the top level esports action that they're covering. That, though, is just about it here from the Snetterton 300 circuit. It's been a fascinating night of racing. Looks as though Chris Lullum is starting to take charge in the championship, but it ain't over yet. 4 races to go, still very much wide open. He could yet be reeled in by Luke Browning, his teammate, and Zach O'Sullivan, the Carlin driver. You'll want to be here next Monday night to find out what happened. So the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy will be back, brought to you in association with Year One Racing TV, Alpha Live, and Momentum Social. Thanks to everyone at Year One as well. Graham Sessford, the producer, for all of his work behind the scenes. Thanks for Damien and Dan as well for popping in for a chat. We'll speak to them all next week, and hopefully we'll see you back as well for more action from the British Formula 4 iRacing Trophy.